Welcome everyone to the Reading Writing Corner. I'm your host, Leanne. And I am so glad to see you on this beautiful day. And welcome you if you are new, and welcome you back if you are an old watcher. This is a non-spoiler review of Night of the Wolf by Alice Borchardt, who is, of course, the sister to Anne Rice, which I do have Anne Rice's books somewhere behind me. 3 of them, at least, that we are going to read and review eventually on the channel. This is part of a series called The Legend of the Wolves. This is technically the prequel to The Legend of the Wolves, which should be a duology. What made me read this book, it is actually considered the second book in the series, even though it should be considered the prequel as it happens before the first book. This is the blurb, which is actually on the inside because this is a hardcover. There's nothing nice about this hardcover. It's just plain hardcover. It's the only hardcover of the series I have. And I don't even know why or how I have it. Or I don't remember how I have it. Anyways, the blurb for it is: the fearsome legions of Julius Caesar have crushed resistance to Roman rule. Watching the tragic aftermath through yellow eyes, afire with curiosity and intelligence, is Manuel, a gray wolf and a shapeshifter, unaware of his preternatural duality. But a new Manuel is about to be born from the ruins. So he's a wolf who gets turned into a human. The sight of the beautiful Emona fills Manuel with unfamiliar feelings and desires, triggering his transformation from wolf to man. In her arms, he learns what it means to love. It is a knowledge that will change him forever. When Emona vanishes, Manuel follows her trail, unaware that he is being pursued by a warrior woman sworn to kill him. With a hunt upon which the 2 adversaries embark will lead them further than they can imagine, to the gates of Rome itself, to the gates of their very souls. So basically, Manuel had seen a beautiful woman and was given the blessings of the moon goddess to transform into a man to be with her. Manuel did not understand how being a man worked and had made many blunders, but he soon got his footing and was able to best anyone that tried to harm him. The set of the characters and motives was all over the place because all of the characters that were in the story seemed to take center stage at one point. So I felt slightly disjointed. I mean, many of the main characters had their own POVs, so it was just very all over the place. I imagine the characters react well in their situations because I do not have any idea how those would react to something like a wolf turning into a man in the old ages and Rome in general. The old ages of Rome. I've read about how they react, but I don't know. Do they react normally? I don't really know. This is a historical fantasy genre, and we can guess about the historical parts of people and how they reacted, but we can't officially say exactly how they would have reacted to certain situations because we don't live in that timeline. Did this live up to my expectations? It was okay. I just didn't understand why she wrote the prequel between the 2 books and then considered it just book 2. She didn't even label it as a prequel. She just part 2, book 2 in the series, even though it should have been prequel in the series. Which character to relate to the most? None of them, but Philo did stand out. Philo stood out. He was a poor slave by accident because, his family lost money, and that's the only way his family could get money back was by selling him. And he was a practicing doctor who lost all his rights because of his father, which is really terrible how things can happen like that in the olden days. Oh, I'll sell you my son who's a practicer of medicine if you just forgive my debt to money that I owe you. Even though my son is old enough to be a man on his own, I can still sell him for some reason. What was most important? The characters or the plot? The plot pulled the characters along as the plot felt more important to the setup of the characters. than anything else. And I only say that because I was confused reading the majority of this. It was a lot of back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And you didn't get to stay attached to that many characters for very long. Like, a lot of them were brief introductions that were there very briefly. Like, there was one dude who was introduced in the beginning only because he ran into a woman who was tasked with killing a wolf. And that's basically the only reason why he's there, is to give that woman a home for a little bit. So this book had too many point of views that I could count because of it and because of how it bounced around. I found that it did affect my reading of the story. I could barely keep up with what was happening. I mean, there's a lot of them. If you stick around for the spoiler part, you'll see that there is a huge list and they all had their own little POVs stuck in it. And it was just a lot. And that was just a short few that I did list. Should you go and read this story/series? Yes, if you like history with fantasy thrown into the mix. Rome history, wolves, romance. Technically, there's some romance in this, even though it's awkward, fumbling romance and star-crossed lovers and all that lovely jazz. So if you don't want to be spoiled, I would suggest you skedaddle. And I thank you for watching. You meet the main characters, side characters, and important main characters, and you actually meet them out throughout this, because sometimes they introduce new ones towards the middle, and even towards the end, you get a few of them thrusted in there. I do not list them all, because there are too many, and most of them are not important at all. And I don't even know why I have this, but Blaze was a frozen man who was found by Mir, and he had a mute wife that he forgot the name of. They were only in the beginning for Dryas, who was sent to kill Manuel, the wolf, without knowing that Manuel was a wolf. Emona was a married woman who Manuel wanted, and she also offered to sacrifice herself, thus being killed, to save her people who were dying of famine, I believe. Then you have Kat, who is a sister-in-law to Emona because her husband Leo was her brother. There was a very out of balance relationship there, where she treated Emona more like a slave than like a sister-in-law because she didn't like her in any way, shape, or form. Fulvia was someone that worked for the Roman warriors under Caesar and everything. Filia was a physician to Lucius. Like I said, he was a slave who wasn't a slave at one point, but he was a physician, and money debts that his father got into, and he got sold as a slave. Lucius, a weak person that befriends Manuel, whose sister is the captain guard for Caesar. I'm pretty sure it's Fulvia that's the sister. Darius was caught and forced to fight in the gladiator box because of things. Firminius works for Caesar, and he did a lot of stuff for Caesar against others. Then you have Caesar the king, who also had his lover Cleopatra, who wanted the Colosseums and the gladiators fighting against each other, and they're the ones who wanted to set up Darius, who was caught and captured and forced as an exotic warrior to fight in the gladiators, because obviously that's what they care about the most. There's, like I said, several POVs in the story where Manuel and almost every character in the book were focused on. Like Lucius was focused on, Mir was focused on, Caesar, Fulvia, Firminius, Blaze, Dryas. They were all had their own little blurbs. Even Philo had his own little thing going on for his point of view. My favorite character was Manuel because he had to learn how to be human and learn how to walk and talk and be human. And he does a pretty good job of it, even though majority of the time he converts back to what he knows, which is being a wolf. My most disliked character was Caesar because he was a cruel man that wanted to watch people die while fighting for his entertainment, and he obviously liked war a lot. It was told, as far as I can remember, in chronological order and appropriate language for the time period of Egypt. I want to say it had good foreshadowing and suspense. The background was not explained for the majority of the characters because they were not important enough for it. Those that were important had their backgrounds explored throughout the whole story. And some of them that were slightly side characters, they had some of their backstory explained, but just enough to understand them. The title of the book the title of the book is Night of the Wolf. Obviously, the wolf Manil could turn into a human for the first time at night and moved about most of the time during the night when he was traveling places. The cover of the book shows a gray/black wolf, probably, and a man that must be considered Manil because he has the yellow eyes. You can see there. What stood out as memorable was the touch of magic in the story, because there was some magic in it, like the moon goddess and Manil turning into a human, as well as the little touch of here and there for healing and stuff. Like Philo heals Lucius. I don't remember if that's actually science or magic. I don't remember. It's been a while. My favorite passage from the story is, "Be quiet," Lucius said, indicating the carriage driver sitting right in front of them. "We'll talk after I get you home." He is well aware that people can and will talk about any conversation one has out in the open when asked. Because a lot of people don't keep your secrets back in that day, because if it wasn't an advantage towards them to keep your secret, why would they? They would blur it out, because it'd probably be more advantage for them to give out your secret than to keep it. My favorite quote, "Fool." It sums up most of the characters' actions in the book to me. A lot of them I felt were being foolish and doing foolish things. What I thought about the end of the book, it did not have the real resolution that I thought it would have. For the most part, I mean, this happens back when Caesar was alive, and then he survives up until Charlemagne survives. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff that happens in between this book and the Silver Wolf book. But it's just, I don't know, it just feels Caesar doesn't die. Darius lives. I mean, you want to just fight Caesar and kill him, but he didn't get a chance to. What did the book remind me of? Robin Hobb, our series that I read. Medieval fantasy, definitely. And a little heavy on the words, descriptions. This book is part of a series called The Legend of the Wolves, and it's one of 3. I want to give this I'm going to give it a 3 because I didn't enjoy it. I really didn't. And honestly, a 3 is being a little generous in my book, but sentimental values, because my mom had it. And I think maybe the first time I read it, I enjoyed it more than I do now. It's possible. I've been forgetting to tack on this, so I'm going to say it now. If you think I deserve a like, a comment, or even your lovely subscription, drop it down below for me if you will. And I will see you next illusion.